Well, would you look at that? It's Thursday and I haven't done a video yet. Fantastic. How about a little Pokemon Go talk? Pokemon Go is super fun. Anyone who still plays the game knows that that's true. But it's really not that much of a good game. Don't worry, I happen to have 10 ideas that I think Niantic could, what I'm looking for, Niantic could Niantic could implore. But I happen to have 10 ideas that I think Niantic could use to really help save Pokemon Go as a game. Not to say that Pokemon Go is dying by any means, because it really isn't. It's not as popular as it was when it first launched a year ago last summer, but it's still a very popular game. I'm not gonna talk about PvP or trading or Generation 3 or shinies or anything like that, because we know all of those things are coming to the game. Now what I'm gonna be talking about is 10 things that I haven't really seen talked about too much, or 10 things that Niantic hasn't brought up, or just 10 things that I think will really help make Pokemon Go a better game. The first one is abilities. In the main series game, Pokemon had what's called abilities, and they can be one of the most fun parts of battle. Abilities were introduced in Generation 3, and they provide passive in-battle effect or out-of-battle effect. This was one of the main things that made Pokemon battling so fun, because you didn't have to rely specifically on just stats or type advantage to know if your Pokemon was good or not. There was so much more to the battle than just types and stats. A Pokemon with not great stats can be really powerful if it has a strong ability. And the main reason why I think abilities will help so much is because they'll help create a more diverse metagame. New raid bosses. Now there have been some talk of, I think, Ursaring, Piloswine, Wobbuffet, and Dragonite as possible raid bosses for the event in Japan right now, but I think new raid bosses could be implemented to really help make the game a lot more fun. Raid bosses have proven to be, by far, at least in my opinion, one of the best parts of Pokemon Go so far. But the issue that I foresee happening in the future is that they're gonna get really boring and stagnant. Now, a great way to mix this up is obviously to change the raid bosses around, but not just make them different Pokemon. You can make certain raid bosses have special moves that can only be obtained by getting them as a raid boss, or if abilities get introduced, they would have special abilities as well. This would help increase the hype of Pokemon Go, which is really the main way that this game truly outshines any other mobile game, is the hype around it is incredible. And I think that new, different, changing raid bosses is a great way to do that. Another one! Another gym rework. I know we just had a gym rework, and it's probably better than the gym system that we had before, but it's really not great. Basically, any Pokemon can be taken down rather easily, and after you beat the team 3 times, you take any gym. It's sort of boring, you don't have to do anything, it's really not very interesting. Luckily, with the most recent gym rework, raids came along, and it really allowed people to sort of ignore the fact that the gym system wasn't that great, just because raiding was so cool. The way the gym system works now is it really doesn't matter what Pokemon you put in the gym, and you don't want your Pokemon to stay in gyms incredibly long anyway, so even if it did make a difference, it's not helpful because you want your Pokemon to faint and come back to you. And if more than one Pokemon faint at the same time and you hit your 50 coin cap, you've wasted that gym space. I think the first step for improving the gym rework is to improve the rewards that you get from beating a gym. Something like what you get from the raid bosses, rare candies, TMs, even just items for defeating the gym. Anything that rewards you in any way for beating a gym rather than only being able to put your own Pokemon in that gym. Another one. HMs. Now, we recently got TMs, which have been great and a super fun way to help customize your Pokemon. But something that hasn't been introduced yet are HMs. Now, HMs are from the main series, and I'm not sure how they would work in Pokemon Go, but I feel like they could be implemented in a fun way. For instance, if you had a Pokemon with Fly, say you're looking on your nearby and you see a Dragonite that's down the road, but for whatever reason you just can't get to it at the moment, if you could use a move like Fly maybe once a day to really quick go to that location, catch that Pokemon, and then fly back, I think that would be super fun. In-game messaging and the ability to see people in your app. Any way to communicate with players in-game, I think would be extremely helpful. At least finding a way to see who's at a raid before you go all the way down there would be great. That's it, that would just be great. Any way to communicate with your other players and see who's playing the game while you're playing would really help add to the community aspect of the game, which is what Niantic has said time and time again that they're trying to achieve. Next one! Leaderboards. Leaderboards would be especially relevant with PvP being introduced at a later date, but I still think they could be beneficial now at this stage of the game. Being able to tell who's rating the most, who has the highest level, any sort of stats that could be compared whatsoever would make it a lot more fun to any players who are looking to play the game more competitively. Next one 1, Stardust eggs. This is something that I've been thinking about for a while, but we have lucky eggs that help double your experience while you have them on. I think something like Stardust eggs, where they double the Stardust that you accumulate while you have it on, would be extremely beneficial to the game. More attackers than ever are worth having, so having any way whatsoever to somehow increase the amount of Stardust you get rather than just catching Pokemon and the 20 little Stardust that you get from feeding berries to Pokemon, I think would make the game a lot more fun. Another one. More ways to catch Pokemon. This is something else that stems from the main series game, but just different kinds of balls. In the main series game, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of balls. Dusk balls, heavy balls, fast balls. Now these balls would be helpful in certain situations for certain Pokemon, and they'd really help you customize and figure out what the best way to catch each individual Pokemon is. This would make the whole catching experience more challenging and a lot more fun. Besides different kinds of balls, you could also introduce different kinds of berries. Something like a pineapple berry that doubles the amount of candies that you get, maybe a berry that doubles the amount of Stardust you get, or any sort of berry that does something similar to what a different kind of ball would do that would just help you increase your chances of catching Pokemon and help you make more decisions while you're catching Pokemon. I've always found that the more decisions you can make in a game really help you feel like you have more control over what you're doing in the game. And the more control you have, the more fun it is because you feel like you've earned things more. On the topic of berries, planting berries. Planting berries is another thing that comes from the main series game that allows you to take your berries, put them in the ground, and grow more of that kind of berry. But I think it would be really cool if you could set up your own farm wherever you wanted in the game to help plant berries. Say for instance, if you're a rural player and there's absolutely no Pokemon Go activity around you, if you could somehow make a farm where your house is and plant berries there, that would at least give you something to do while you're not out looking for Pokemon, but while you're home. I know the whole point of Pokemon Go for Niantic is to get people out of the house, but even the smallest thing to help people play the game a little bit if there's nothing around them, I think would lengthen people's enjoyment of the game. Number 10, breeding. Breeding also comes from the main series games and really helps you further customize your Pokemon. It helps you increase your IVs of your Pokemon if you breed 2 Pokemon with strong IVs together. If abilities were introduced, it'd help you give certain specific abilities to certain Pokemon that you've bred, and it could even help Pokemon gain specific moves that they could only obtain through breeding. I think one of the most fun parts of Pokemon is the customization that you get with your Pokemon. You can do so many things to affect their abilities, their moves, their IVs, everything about them. The more of those aspects that are brought from the main series games into Pokemon Go, I think would really help people grow an attachment to their Pokemon. Basically, most of my ideas are ways to get more Stardust or ideas ripped right from the game, and I sort of understand. I just feel like Pokemon Go is honestly such a bad game, and I don't want to say bad, but it is. It's a bad game. It's really not good. There's so many issues with it. It's extremely basic, but for some reason, we're all still playing the game. Not all, a lot. If you're watching this, maybe you. But because Pokemon itself is such an amazing concept, people are still attached. Now, if you can find a way to have those people really stay interested in the game itself because it's a good game, you can bring in new players that aren't interested in Pokemon and help keep players that are only staying for nostalgic sake a little bit longer. Don't get me wrong, I love Pokemon Go. It's given me a lot of great memories and a ton of fun, but it still sucks and it needs just a little help. Thanks for watching. New videos every Friday. Subscribe if you want. Unique New York. Unique New York. Stings the nostrils. I don't know why I can't say this. This is ridiculous.